Hello.
Here we are. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to this new episode of Contemporary Music Talks. And today I'm super honored and pleased to have Fabrizio Modonese Palumbo with me here.
Thank you for having me.
Fabrizio is, he has like a decades-long career in contemporary music and art in general.
I'm not that old. Actually, I am. You're right. Sorry for interrupting you. I'm ancient. I know I'm ancient.
Well, being ancient is not a bad thing in my opinion.
No, it's bad for me though. That is the problem. It's definitely bad for me though.
So yeah, Fabrizio is a musician and a performer and a producer and a curator. So he does a lot of stuff, and he collabed with many different artists from all over the world. I don't want to say too many names, but yeah, Xiu, Little Henny, Johan Johansson, Teo Teardo, etc. Arbeitokum from Einsturzende Neubauten, so super interesting collaborations. And yeah,
I have some nice friends. Yes, that's what it's about.
So yeah, we are here to talk a little bit about his works and his process and what he does, because I think it's very interesting. At least for me, it's very interesting to to understand how a contemporary artist work and is able to to create a job and a career with what he does. So yeah, I want to ask. Fabrizio is laughing.
Because job, yeah, it's definitely a job. Career was like, oh wow, I have one. I didn't know it. Yes, okay. It's not the best time ever. We all know that. So.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I want to ask you about. For example, one of your latest projects, I think, that I found really interesting, and it's called the Svalbard Suite. And can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's a quite complex project because it's not only about music. Music is the side of it that I was more involved with, but we work together with other people, and I say we because the project came out under the name of Blanke Salamander, which is the band, the project that I have with my husband, Paul Bishop. And but for this specific project, we were also working with a theater company called Il Mutamento, here from Torino, Italy, and a visual artist and performer, Gianni Colosimo, a video maker, Omar Bovenzi, and then we had music contribution by Shushu and Julia Kent, and by the local minor choir, and I hope I haven't forgot anyone. And the whole project was born actually a few years ago when myself, Paul, and my mother, so it was kind of a family holiday, went to the Svalbard for the first time. Svalbard is an island, is an archipelago, actually on the north of Norway. And specifically the town of Longyearbyen, which is the main and actually the only town there, is the northest town in the world where actually people live all the time. There are other settlements north than that, but maybe they are only for scientific reason, research, and they only live there for some part of the years. Whereas Longyearbyen is a quite interesting place because even if there's only 2,000 people living there, which is nothing compared to the fact that you have 6,000 polar bears. So there are actually more bears than human beings. And they have a very, somehow, I would say metropolitan lifestyle. They have a theater, festival of all kind, a food festival, music festival, movie festival, and they have fantastic restaurants, and actually some of the best in Scandinavia. And not only Scandinavia, I can assure you they are quite good. And so it's an interesting place because it's really somehow in the big north, really. You really live on the permafrost, and you live detached by the rest of society. But it's not like living in the middle of nowhere, because I mean the society is very alive and the community is very alive. And that's why we felt in love with the place the first time we actually went there, just as tourists. We went there in January, which is the polar night, which means 24 hours of darkness, which to me is fine because I hate the light, I hate the sun, I hate summer. So to me it was like heaven. And actually it is like heaven, because then when you look at the sky, you have the northern lights, which are absolutely mesmerizing. And you also get high, I mean, literally high on the air, which is super pure on the oxygen. So people that live there, of course, they don't notice. But for me, it was really like, my lungs were opening, and it was quite aesthetic. And so, yeah, it was like facing a completely different reality, and we fell in love with it. And we came back for holiday again as a family thing. The following year, later in the year, in late February, if I remember well, when actually you had both day and night, and so we could explore the area. And we realized that the first time we missed a lot because we didn't see actually where we were. And then when we saw it, we were like, whoa, this is just incredibly fucking amazing. And yeah, it was mind blowing. And that is when we started to think how we could translate that with our language, which is mainly sound and music. And it's not an effort we could do on our own. And that's how we built this network that they said before. And most of the people actually then came back with us the third time, and so we can work on location, and other actually work from distance, which I think is interesting because there are two different perceptions of the space. One is from people that experience, and of course everyone experiences in a different way, and the other was actually experiencing by storytelling somehow. And so we put these elements together. And of all the projects that I'm part of, Blind Case Salamander, the one I have with Paul, was the one that was working better for that. And not only because in a sentimental way, we were there the first time and we discovered the place together, but also because Blind Case Salamander is the most electroacoustic project of mine. I mean, not only mine, but the most electroacoustic project I'm involved with. And so it was perfect actually to tell a story and exploring a space using both somehow composed music and field recording. And field recording is an element that we had in Blind Case Salamander since the first album. We did 4 as Blind Case Salamander, if I remember well. Maybe there are 5. I'm not really good in keeping track. And but that element grew and grew within our way of approaching, and we realized that was specific to the project was actually what I was saying before. So documenting the space within which the music was actually manifesting and taking place. And in that way, the Svalbard Suite, which is the album that came out from this experience, is probably the most successful of our attempt, because we had more time to work, and we knew since the beginning that is exactly what we wanted to do. So we did a lot of field recording, we did a lot of interviews with the people living there. We actually did interview well for Homer documentary. But then we use some excerpt and some bits of those talk and those interview as a sound source for the album. And then we use music kind of like to bind everything together and to give a natural flow. What we wanted to do was to represent our experience and our trip in a musical piece. Of course, we went there 3 times. The last time we've been there 3 weeks. And the musical piece is barely 40 minutes. So, of course, you have kind of like to implode everything. And also in the musical piece, there is a lot of fiction. When I talk about it, I usually compare it to two of my favorite directors' work, which are Werner Herzog and David Lynch. And not because, whoa, I'm so cool like them. No, but because I found them very inspiring in different way, and because somehow the way of making documentary that Werner Herzog use and does his specific style is very open about the fact that a lot of stuff that he's putting in his movie is actually not documenting anything at all. It's actually something that he came up with, but is functional to tell the story and to make it more real than it would be if you just, put on screen what actually you filmed. And that is what filmmaking is about somehow, and what storytelling is about. And personally, my approach to music is not really that of a composer, also because I don't have that studies, I don't have the tool, I don't have the language, I don't write, I don't read music. But also is really my approach is I actually approach music as it was a movie, always, every time. So to me, I'm composing by scenes. I really visualize something and I use sounds to make it happen and to make it real. I'm probably just a frustrated director, and I am, because making movies is much more expensive than making music, I guess. So that's how I end up making music instead of making movies. But I also think that is not necessarily specific only to me, but it's definitely one trait of my work. I'm very aware of that. And so we use that also with Paul for the Svalbard Suite, so we compose scene and somehow we respect the timeline. So arriving, walking around, exploring, meeting people, taking a boat, sailing on the other side of the island where there is this abandoned town called Pyramiden, and then coming back and going to a disco, because actually they have a disco night there. And which is quite surreal, even if there is nothing surreal to go into a car. But it's surreal when you actually look outside of the window and you think, really, here, right now, in this moment, to me, was quite incredible. So we actually used the real timeline, but with some events that we recreated through music. And I was also saying David Lynch, because David Lynch, to me, is... I totally love his work and his style and his aesthetic. But mainly what I'm interested in then as an artist myself and what I use is the idea of knowing very well what is the core of your idea. And doesn't matter how you get there, and you can change route every time, and you can change languages all the time you want. You don't need to be consistent. The only thing you need to be consistent with is the core of the idea. So you know that you're here. I'm looking myself mirror in the camera and it's very confusing. You know that you're here and you want to get there. Doesn't matter. You can spiraling in, out, back, forth, change. It can take 5 minutes of 50 years, but you know that you go there. And when you go there, actually, that is exactly your final goal. And then we work with other people. Everybody, of course, had their own language and their own specific aesthetic, and we respected that. But we all working, collaborating with each other. And so Paul and I also did the soundtrack for all the other module pieces of the work, pieces of this puzzle somehow. And so we also did a soundtrack album that has different music than the one of the Svalbard Suite. The soundtrack has been composed in Turin, recorded in Turin, and so it's more of a musical, more classic musical piece somehow. And all of these pieces then come together. And the work is still in progress also because it's already old. We work on that in 2018, if I'm not wrong. It came out in 2018, and then 2020, nothing happened, but a lot of things happened. And in Svalbard, more things happened because they were not plagued by this horrible claustrophobic situation we are all in Svalbard that didn't have so much impact because there are only a few people. They just closed the island. So of course, economically, even for them, have an impact. But they lived normally while we were locked in our houses. They were actually being very pagan and partying for the arrival of the sun. And I was watching them online, and it was like, fuck, I want to be there, please, but you can't go there in this moment. I think now you can again, and I suggest everyone to do it. But also I think that happened is that part of the world is the one that is affected the most by global warming. So the changes are super quick, and what we filmed, what we recorded is already not true anymore somehow. Mm-hmm. So we want to, which is incredibly sad and worrying. And and so we like somehow to keep the project alive, to keep this documenting thing going on. One thing they have in Longyear been that I forgot is this incredible structure. Beautiful aesthetically beautiful. I don't remember the name of the architect, but you can of course look online. And it's the seed vault, where all the seeds from different parts of the world they are there under the permafrost. So in case of any reason, because of the change of weather or other situation, like can also be a war, and luckily maybe some kind of plants, some kind of seed, they don't exist anymore. They can withdraw it from there, replant it, and rebuild the environment. And there are seed vaults everywhere around the world. The one in Svalbard is the backup one.
Okay.
And the people, they're not really supposed to withdraw the seeds from there, because it's really like, it's the backup. So something really extreme is supposed to happen. Sadly, it already happened because Syria did it already twice, and we all know why they had to. So, and now they're also building a different kind of vault, which is the vault for data, which is interesting because we live in this digital cloud world, which means we are the next dark age. Because, it happened, and people was actually laughing about that when last year, MySpace collapsed, and all the data on MySpace collapsed, and everybody was, who cares? Who is on MySpace anymore? And they said, nobody is, but that is not the point. That is that an archive of creation, of music, of video suddenly disappeared, and there is no backup to that. That was the backup, and so what they're doing in Svalbard is actually they're putting all the data back on film, literally on film, because it's a good support, to store data, and they put that under the permafrost. So it's basically like the Egyptian pyramid, and I found that incredibly inspiring and fantastic because it's true. Because today we still have the Egyptian the Egyptian paper, and we know something about the culture thanks to that, but we already lost something that was happening in our Western world 10 years ago, so we are back into building pyramid, in this case under the ice, which I found it incredibly interesting and somehow poetic. So so that was the project.
It really is. It really is, and also, I really like this approach that you have of it's creating and it's documenting at the same time. It's a work of acoustic ecology, but at the same time is also a creative work. Super interesting approach. Also, super interesting place.
I'm basically a liar, I'm telling you the truth, but then when you listen to the music, that is my truth. But I think that is what every artist does. We are a filter between reality and utopia. I actually think that is the role of artists in the world, is project and build utopia that can be somehow a template for a possible system, a possible society, and that's, I think, is what our work is about. Not necessarily in my case about music or about movie or about painting or about writing, but it's actually about putting ideas out there and give chance, possibilities, and build up community.
So what are the ideas that you are trying to to spread out there with your work? I don't. I know it's a
I knew
huge
it.
question, but
Why I was saying I knew it, I said, why the fuck are you saying this, Fabrizio? You're putting yourself in trouble. Um well, I actually don't know, but I'm not saying that to get out of this situation. As I was saying before, I have a very clear idea, usually, of what I want to do. You know, not necessarily I know the effect that that is producing, and I don't think that is the point. And also, it depends from project to project, because something like for my solo project, which is called the Heart in parentheses, which is more like a song oriented, even if not in a classical typical way. It's not really chorus and verse and chorus, even if on the new album I have, after almost 30 years, a song that is chorus, verse and chorus. So I'm quite proud of that because it took me forever to get there. It's the most difficult thing to do, but in an effective way. So with that project, every album had a theme, so I knew very well the idea that I wanted to putting out there. And the new one, which will come out in October, is probably the most personal. So, which also means that, of course, I'm talking about some issues that they've been part of my life all the time. One is to be a gay man, so it's about the LGBTQI community and stuff like that. So in that case, I know that there is a very political outcome of my music and my words. But in other case, like it could be the Svalbard Suite, is the idea, the utopia, as I said before, is more the is more portraying and building up a possible natural and social and political environment. So it's not really like this is the way things should be done, but this is a possible world that we can be part of. And to me, that is necessary and very inspiring. It was inspiring for me perceiving it. I hope it's going to be inspiring for people that somehow have the opportunity to visit this space, not physically going to Svalbard, which of course everybody can do by buying the flight tickets and booking an hotel, but visiting the possibilities that are part of that world. One of the things of Svalbard that to me was really mind-blowing, and is probably the thing that we focus the most in our work, both the music and the documentary and the theater piece and the performing part of that, and I think those are all, the elements, is that Svalbard is administrated by Norway, but is actually an international territory. There are no Svalbard citizens. There is nothing like that. Yeah, and now I don't remember the number, but I think there are something like 35 different nationalities living together on the Svalbard territory. So on 2,000 people, you actually have 35 people, 45 citizenship working together, living together, and on a space that is not really meant for human to live in, but they build a community, they build a society, and a society that belongs to the world. You just, of course there is bureaucracy is everywhere, and I think it's gonna get worse there as well because more people are going there, the more difficult it is. But you just need the work to be there. You don't need a visa to get there. You don't need to be a citizen. Nobody actually was born in Svalbard, and nobody can be there after death because the ice would preserve the body and also the virus and the bacteria forever. And nobody's born there because there are no infrastructure that are safe enough for people to be born there. So if you go there to experience it and to share it. And I think that especially right now, even before the whole COVID crisis, but when there was, all the right wing around the world, like we had in Italy with, the previous government, Cinque Stelle and Salvini, or in America with Trump, Bolsonaro, and, I don't need to list all of this. scary people and very arguable people out there. But the world, instead of becoming open, was closing the border. And then we had COVID, which in theory, what we should have learned from that was to come together. But what happened was like, put your mask, you are behind that, stop the interaction. And that's the good thing for the world, instead of how can we actually move further and solve the problem together. So, and then you look as well about that, and you have kind of like a possible universe, a possible template where actually people create something and preserve it together out of the ice, literally, so out of nowhere. So in that case, that was the message that we want to put out there. And I like to think that our music and our sounds succeeded in that by building an environment that is welcoming and inclusive, and in which it's possible to get lost for 40 minutes and take something out of there. So this is a possible idea, as I said, for my work, can be more about my identity, and by my identity I mean how, as an individual, I relate to the world. And if I do that, I'm sure someone else in the world actually can have the same experience, or can use my experience as inspiring, because other people, other artists' experience were inspiring to me. I mean, recently I found myself in the weird position, weird for me because I never done it before, to talk to younger people about my queer identity and about inclusiveness and stuff like that in high school. And I always tell them that literally music saved my life. It saved my life because I grew up in a small village here on the mountain. I mean, not here, because now I'm in Turin, luckily so. But I mean, when I was young, I was in a small village on the mountain. And then, there was not a lot of music and art back then in the 70s. I mean, there was no internet, basically, So TV and radio were my sources. And then, I had David Bowie or Klaus Nomi appear on the screen, and that gave me a cue. That gave me possibilities, and their queerness was not only because they were queer people. Their artistic language was completely queer, was completely not within a specific genre, So, and that's what I learned, and that's what and so they don't only they made me feel not alone anymore, which is saving someone's life, but they also gave me a language, which was not copying the language, but they told me you can build up your own language and you can express yourself with that, So I like to think that somehow it's a chain reaction. So now it's up to me and other artists, to do the same thing and keep this going. For other projects, what we want to put out there, what is the idea? It can be more less specific. Something like Larsen, which is a band, and we've been a band for almost 30 years. It's 4 of us, and we are 4 different people with 4 different experiences, 4 different identities. We are kind of a monster with 1 body, 4 head, or maybe 1 head and 4 body, which is even scarier, and definitely more difficult to manage when you want to get somewhere, and so in the case of Larsen, I would say that the cinematic, the filmic side of the project probably won't taking over, so maybe it's less directly political. But if you ask me, all art is political, and the fact itself that you decide to play a certain kind of music and working in a certain way within a market or out a specific market is political, and again, giving possibility indication. One of these is that do your own thing. You don't have to use a language that doesn't belong to you. Find your own language, use it, develop it, and make it your own. Something that I always tell to people when they ask me, other musician, younger musician, what should they do? It's like, start from what you like, but then when you realize that you are reproducing that, stop it. You have to do something that even you don't recognize, and that is when you got something. When you don't feel comfortable with something, it's probably because actually you found your comfort zone, but you don't know it yet. You know, so that is the starting point. So I guess that is maybe the idea. But as I said, it really depends on project to project. You know, a few years ago, I did an album to which I gave the stupid title because I wanted to give a stupid title, which was all about Satan. And so that was the idea. It was about Satan, you know. And why Satan? I thought, why not? It's just fun, and it's mythological creature, and it gave me the opportunity to talk about issues that otherwise they would never have been channeled by my music, like the chaotic nature of the universe, you know, which sounds super philosophical, but it's not, because then you open the door and you have to face it, you know. So why don't play with it, you know? Just why don't be also playful with things?
Yeah, true. Very true. Absolutely. So yeah, I think that you just took the topic that I was trying to save for the end of the conversation, and
I'm sorry.
no problem. It was super interesting and super nice.
But
I know that you.
I still have this though. If we run out of time, I can do a solo of that for 20 minutes. If run out of topic, not of time, sorry.
Perfect. No, the other thing that I wanted to ask you is about your work as a curator. So it's I think it can be seen as a complementary type of work together with your creative one, directly creative, like producing music and playing and performing. So how do you approach curation when you do this kind of work?
I think I'm probably a very, I was going to say boring, and then I stopped myself. But I'm a very boring person because, I always have the same approach about everything I do. And I think everything I do is part of the same global project, which is me as not only an artist, but as a person. So what I said before about building a musical piece, I applied that exactly in the same way about curating an event. There is an idea, and then all of the pieces, they have to come together to give to that idea a physical manifestation somehow. So when I curate something, is never about genre, first because I really hate genre-oriented music or movie. That to me is boring. That is really boring, not boring like I am. That is really boring. So I'm not interested in that, but I'm interested in finding connection and basically semantics, about building a meaning, and I just took elements. So when I curate an event, if it's only a musical event, of course, I found different kind of artists and different kind of music that somehow they are functional to the topic, to the discourse, to the exploration, to whatever I have to face. I like it even more when I had the chance also to put in elements that are not necessarily musical. And we do that a lot with, I'm part of a collective, which is a mixed heart, LGBTQI plus collective. It's called In the Ghetto. And that to me is probably the best thing that happened to me in the last 2 years, because we work in total freedom and we all have this attitude. Is about preserving and building your own culture, your imaginary, your visions, and using all language you can put together. So you can totally have a drag queen reading Oscar Wilde, as we recently did, together with an extreme noise concert and movies from I don't know, Palestine, and these things that apparently they are not connected to each other not necessarily it's true that they're not connecting to each other, because maybe they portray and they channel the same kind of attitude, the same kind of vision. But even that doesn't matter. They become part of the puzzle we want to build. So they're just elements of a wider conversation somehow. So yeah, I think that semantic is somehow the key word of the way I approach things and what I do. And that's why they don't hire me as often as I would like to. Because it's not like, let's do a reggae festival and then you find a person that is really into reggae and they do a great festival. I'm not saying that that is not a good festival. I mean, of course, and I could totally enjoy it as a member of the audience. It's just not what I do. What I do is always about, building possibilities. So.
And about, of course, the context where you do this work as a curator. How do you manage to to be able to be in touch with all the institutions and all the situations that you need to face? There is some kind of help from the outside, or the work of the curator is really something difficult in general, and
that's why
nowadays
that's why I like to do curation, because I really don't care about all of that. I mean,
okay.
I just come up with my dream lineup, and I think I've been around for quite a long time now, so I have a lot of personal connection, and that is facilitating me to get in touch with some artists. But most of the time, you just write to the artist, and most of the time they answer you. And then from that moment on, if there is an agent, a manager, or, that is not really the job of a curator anymore. It tends to become, at least in Italy, just because the work is not done properly, but it shouldn't be. And I became quite tight about saying, this is what I do. I'm not stepping there. And it's not because I'm a diva. It's really because I'm not good in that other job. I'm not good with bureaucracy. I'm very passionate about the thing I do, and that passion and bureaucracy together, they are dangerous, because mean that the budget is disappearing in 1 second. So that it shouldn't be up to someone that is curating. There should be different. And about institution, well, usually those are the ones that are hiring you as a curator. So once that they get to you and they talk with you, they are supposed to know what you do and the way you do it and be fine with it. Not necessarily it's true. Most of the time it's not, but it should be, So, and so no, basically what they do is really to come up with a concept. And once that I'm convinced about the concept, figure out how to get there and make it happen. And of course, you have to work within limitation. Of course, you know that if it's a small event, you cannot have, an army of white camel doing interpretative dance, something like that. You have to be more real. But you can still have that in your mind. That can still be what you want to do, and maybe then you do that on. Not necessarily on a smaller scale, but with different tools, And I actually always think that thinking big is always the right thing to do, because then you can lower the scale. The opposite is not really exciting on the other side, Also, because if you do the opposite, what you do is basically just, I still have some money, spend more, I make it bigger, and I call it bigger name. That to me is not interesting. All the festivals of the world are full of big names, and they're always the big names. And especially now when we are starting to be on stage back again, maybe, I don't know, for a long and blah, 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 blah. What you see is not actually more ideas. You don't see really the effort to digest what we've been through and approach it, translate it, or move forward and let it behind us, which should be probably the right thing to do. But you basically see that only the one with money and with fame survived, and that's where the investment is going back into it. To me, that is like again, boring and pointless and non-productive and politically disgusting. So it's not what I'm interested in. So I'm never interested in the big name. I maybe did some stuff in the past as a curator where some big name were involved, but just because they were the right people in that for the concept that I had for, never just because was like, oh, we need to have a bigger audience. Let's call Nick Cave. Who cares? Is this playing Israel just because you want to, be annoying in regards of Brian Eno? I mean, to me, you should actually know what you're talking about. And yeah, that to me is completely pointless, but sadly is what I see happening most of the time.
And just to to close everything, what are your your ideas for the future? What are the perspective that you are trying to create now in this specific moment, which is of course particularly difficult for art
Community.
workers in general, and of course communities?
I think the key word is community. What I'm trying to build, what I'm trying to be part of, what they feel the need of being a part of is actually a community. I think that the idea of a network should be actually a network of communities. We have people. Community is not also necessarily based or limited by geographical boundaries. I mean, my community is very open, but also I want it also to be very local because I have people around me, and we can do things together. And yeah, so it's about putting energy and community, because I think that is what we completely forgot over the last year and a half, and actually even more than that. But I think that the last year and a half was actually an absolute catastrophe from that point of view, because I'm a very political person, and I think my work is very political, but I also think that the work of everybody else is political, even if they don't realize so. So, so that's something that I'm really, focused on. And I think in the last year and a half, and again, even before, that has been completely not only removed, but considered dangerous, poisonous. Yeah, and no, it shouldn't be. That is exactly what us as human beings are on this planet for. Politics is not about parties. Politics is about polis, in the Greek meaning of terms. We have to do that, and we should not left people behind. And if you think also in music, we left people behind all the time. We left for economical reason, for economical reason, basically. All the rest is a consequence of that. But a lot of people cannot do this job because they don't have the economical tool of doing it, or because they are in another part of the world where they cannot actually have their work past the borders, and because they cannot pass the borders. And so yeah, and so they're left behind even more so now, when yeah, when the body, literally the physical bodies, became considered like threatening instead of a tool for connecting. And so is the body of work as a consequence of that, because the two things are, to me, absolutely connected. They're not. I mean, there is not that dichotomy. We've been spending more and more time, as we are doing. We're doing because this is the way of doing it. So it's not a criticism for this. But we're spending more and more time through this kind of media, and and so we are removing the body from the conversation somehow. But the body has to be the topic of the conversation. And when you are an artist, your work is part of your body. It's how you connect with people. is an amplification of yourself, So is your political value. So that to me is what I really feel the need of doing it. And I'm hope I'm succeeding on my small individual scale of contributing to.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
I was too oppressing and dark. I don't
No,
want
no,
to be
no, no,
that. I'm sorry. Actually,
no, no.
in my mind, that is being optimistic, and that's how fucked up I am.
No, no, but I think I totally agree with you, and of course, that's also one of the open questions of what I'm doing lately, because of course I'm working a lot, and I worked a lot for the last year and a half online, trying to to create this kind of connection between people and between audience with a specific vision and with a specific type of idea of things. But of course, creating this kind of context on a virtual level doesn't mean that necessarily it will end up in something in real life. So it's is it worth it to try to create this cultural context in this way or not? We'll see. We'll see. It's not. It's not. It's an open question. I don't have an answer, but of course, I'm trying to do it to see if there is an output that can become something real. So
Yeah. At
we'll
least
see.
we're
We'll see.
trying, At least we're
Yeah,
trying.
exactly. Being
Yeah, so,
desperate and closed in our homes is not the answer, of course.
no.
So, I think that's it for this conversation. It was really super nice, and I hope to
Thank
see
you.
you in person also
You
really
will.
soon.
You will.
We will.
Somewhere you will. Yeah.
So, thanks for the chat. It was super nice, and
Thank you. Thank you again for having me. It was lovely. Thank you. Grazie,
so
Andrea.
thanks also everyone for tuning in, and of course I remind you that there is going to be a new episode of Contemporary Music Talks every Friday. So of course check the schedule of the channel down here if you're interested in that.
Oh, and
But yes,
can I remind people to, if they have time, to actually watch the previous one you did with Joan Marriage, because that was super interesting one about electronic music, a book she wrote about female in electronic music. That is
yeah,
another about inclusiveness. That is another great topic. So
yeah, it was super interesting also because we were there in real person, in real in a real
yeah,
space
that was nice.
together.
That was
Also
nice. Yeah, that was nice.
in that beautiful place. So yeah, it was nice, and I'm gonna re-upload a new version of that talk with a special editing because we had also the pleasure to have Aviak to make some shots
Oh,
during
nice.
the talk. So he created a video with all the talk plus his shots. So I'm super curious also to see it, and yeah. So, see you next Friday with another episode of Contemporary Music Talk. Next week, we will have Francesca Naibo, who is a guitarist and performer, improviser. Super interesting conversation about improvisation, probably, and contemporary music. So, yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.
Ciao, grazie. Bye, bye, bye.
Bene.